This is Deploy Asana Successfully, episode number 3. Today, with my friend Bastien Siebman, we're going to discuss about a very important topic, Asana workflows. Welcome to Deploy Asana Successfully. Ready to go after the first episodes where we discussed the analysis that every organization has to go when deploying Asana, and the second episode where we talk about how to plan, how to deploy Asana and the first steps. Today we're going to discuss about the topic that it's quite recurrent when you make like the first part of the deployment of Asana, which is workflows. Hi, Bastien. How are you? Thank you for being here.
I'm good. Thank you.
So let's talk about workflows. First of all, do you think that the concept of workflow is something that most of the organizations are familiar with, or is it something that you find yourself explaining when it comes to moving to Asana?
I think most of us have an idea of what a workflow is, but we might not have the same idea. And to be honest, I wouldn't be able to tell you what's the difference between a workflow and a process. So I usually use those words, and depending on the context, might mean different things. And even within Asana, when you use the word workflow, it's actually a specific tab within a project, but it might also mean other things. So I think it's kind of a confusing word.
Yeah. I try to, sometimes I work with the analogy of a process that can be a date-based project, like a launch of a new product or attending or organizing an event. And sometimes you have ongoing processes like customer support or onboarding new employees. So it's important to agree on a definition with the customer and the organization that is going to deploy Asana to be on the same page. But
and maybe we can maybe you can just break down the word. Like workflow means literally how the work flows. So literally, where does it go? Who gets the work? When do you change hands? So in Asana, that's pretty straightforward. It's where are the tasks? How are they organized within sections? What makes them move automatically or manually? I think that's a simple but yet efficient definition.
I like to work on the virtuous cycle of capturing the work, how work is generated. Is it what's the trigger that generates this that gets the workflow started? The second stage is how you prioritize this work, like who is going to take care of this, when, if there are rules based on the nature of this work. And the third stage is report about this work, like what's the status of the work, or what's blocking the work. So breaking it down in these 3 stages: capture, organize, and report. It is pretty important. And then understand when it comes to Asana, if this is a date-based workflow, or if it's something that it's permanent, that it's recurring, it's ongoing. Because the approach is quite different. And when setting up Asana for this type of workflows, it's there's much difference between one or the other.
And I think in the steps, you forgot the step doing, because organizing is great, but you have to do things. And I think, joke aside, sometimes we forget how important it is to have the right assignee, because if you expect people to be efficient, you should expect them to work from my tasks. So they should be able to see exactly what they have to do, which means they need to have a task assigned to them. If something has to be done by 3 different persons, they need 3 different tasks. Otherwise, you end up doing things that are not really well documented. So the doing part is important because you need clarity on exactly what you need to do next.
Yeah, this brings me to one of the most typical questions that we Asana consultants face in most of the engagements. That is, can I assign a task to 2 different people? It's
No, and it's a good thing. No, Asana actually doesn't have multi-assignees, and it's a joke we usually have between consultants. There's actually a blog post by Asana from, I think, almost 10 years ago, where they explain why you don't have multiple assignees. And the reason is accountability, because if you give something to do to multiple people, that's the best way to not have anything done, because no one is accountable. So you need to have a leader. That leader can delegate to other people. You can have something go from hand to hand, but at any given point, you need to be able to turn to someone responsible for that piece of work. And funny enough, I recently did a study of what people thought about Monday.com, especially
Mhm.
people moving from Monday to Asana. And one of the things they said was that Monday has multiple assignees and it doesn't work, exactly for the reason we just highlighted, because the work ends up not being done because multiple people were supposed to be accountable, but at the end, no one is.
Yeah, and this brings me to a feature that Asana recently launched. When you are creating a task and you click to select the assignee, you have an option to assign to multiple people. And this is somehow confusing because it's like, yeah, okay, now I can assign a task to
Yeah.
2 different people, and this is not the purpose of this feature. The purpose of this multiple assignees is to easily clone this task and assign it to multiple people. Let's say that you need your team to report when they want to take their holidays this summer season, and you don't want to manually create a task for every member of the team. Then you can create one task and assign this task to multiple people. But it's not one task assigned to different people. It's that you clone into multiple tasks.
Yeah.
I always make a joke that it's I'm gonna tattoo myself one action, one task, one assignee. It's like this is like a golden rule that I encourage everyone to
Yeah. And
follow. One
also, yeah,
action.
also no Asana, no work. So if it's not in Asana, it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Um,
I actually I saw that there's a new T-shirt from Asana that has
yes, in the Swag
this.
store with this.
Is
Um,
it in Asana?
it's in the Asana Swag store. What's funny about the feature you talked about is that it's not new at all. It has been around for as long as I can remember. The only
Really?
thing is, yeah, it's kind of hidden because it only shows up when you click on the assignee from the right, from the task pane. Doesn't show up in
Yeah.
the list view, so only for the task pane. And it's used to be called assign copies, I think. And they recently renamed it to assign to multiple people. But it has been there for
Okay.
years. You just never seen it.
No. This is like first word about this. I can recall
And I agree, it's
this.
confusing because it is assigning to multiple people, but it does create copies.
Yeah, and somehow this is yeah, it's quite tricky. But I think that and I think that it's a piece of advice for the champions that can follow this podcast. Being
But
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to share that from the outside, when you're not using Asana, it feels like this is a big problem. But having worked with hundreds of companies, I can tell you it almost never is a problem. And we always find a way. And people are usually like, yeah, you're right. It actually doesn't work to apply something, to assign something to multiple people. And in fact, we always have a leader and we can pass that work around. So I don't recall any clients having an actual problem with this feature being missing. I
Yeah,
don't know if you do.
yeah, and on top of that, I would add that I like to challenge when someone says, no, no, because it's very typical. No, no, our case is very special. Yeah, we have a task that has two different, and as I challenge them, explain me that task, and I would say 99% of the cases, it's two different tasks. It's like, yeah, you have like this piece of video that you have to edit and your colleague has to post it. It's not one task with two people.
Yeah.
It's actually it's two different tasks. But in
Or
your mind, yeah,
yeah,
it's one task.
or they have to review something, and in that case, either they have to review at the same time, so you have two tasks, or they have to review one after the other. So in that case, you have either two tasks connected, or it's the same task being passed around.
Yeah, yeah. What I was going to say before is that I think that it's very important, the basics, the foundation of how you're going to use Asana. And that's why I like to spend a lot of time explaining how to correctly create a task. It's very important, the title of the task, the description, the assignee, the date, all the information in the task, all this, it's adding value to the project, it's adding value to the organization. So if the way you create task is crap, then it's difficult to build on top of that. So it's very important to create good task, and to have this in mind, that you need one task per each action. You have to be very detailed. Yeah, it takes a lot of time to create like a template. It takes a lot of time to create the process or the protocol. But once you have it, you have like a GPS for your processes, and it's very easy. It's very scalable. You can hire new employees, and they will have like a very clear uh, map of the process and what should be done at each step. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, and I think a good test is what happens if tomorrow you break your leg and don't come to work for a month? What if we have to reassign everything you were assigned on to someone else? Will they end up with half-baked tasks where titles don't make sense? Or will they end up with tasks properly created, pointing towards processes with dates and discussions and documents and everything? And you should aim for tasks that you could delegate to potentially anyone that has your skill set, and they shouldn't need anything else beyond what's actually described within the task.
Yeah, totally. Um, Going back to the workflow concept, do you, when working with a customer and you like identify the critical workflow that you were going to start with, do you like to build this workflow directly on Asana, or do you use any other tool to map the workflow before jumping into Asana?
It's a great question, and we've had that debate internally for a long time. I've been working by myself for a long time, and I was doing everything in Asana. But then my team grew, and within the team, we had people that were very comfortable with tools like Miro. And I've seen some colleagues do amazing stuff using Miro. So before jumping into Asana, they create a Miro board explaining all the cases with the clients and agreeing on what's needed. And I think in many cases it's better because you don't have to teach people Asana and at the same time build things, because people they understand Miro board, so you can really debate what's important and what the workflow does before jumping into Asana. Sometimes what I do is, while they explain something, I create the Asana stuff at the same time. And at the end, when they're done explaining, I show them and I'm like, is it what you were talking about? It usually works really well, but it requires a good, yeah, a lot of expertise to be able to listen and at the same time build and make that process evolve as they explain. But yeah, it usually has a special effect on them.
Yeah, I didn't thought about Miro for doing this. I usually work with an Excel spreadsheet because sometimes organizations are familiar with Excel, and you can even share with them like this is a spreadsheet where you have all the columns that explain what you should feel like in each row.
I would agree. If you're working on something that's going to end up being a project, especially a list project.
Yeah.
But in many cases, what they're going to explain turns out to be multiple projects, a portfolio above this, maybe some automation. And the Miro board that we have already has all those icons and pre-built blocks, allowing us to, if you want a portfolio, we just drag and drop the portfolio icon and we create an area around project. And it works really well because it's not always simply a spreadsheet. Sometimes it really goes beyond this.
Maybe we should talk about a previous step. If you are mapping like this, let's say big picture or high level with where there are even portfolios and a bunch of projects, is this because you don't try to identify a small workflow? Like maybe the customer explains like all what they do, but what I try to do is like, okay, we have this big picture. Let's focus on this specific small part of this process. Then we will zoom out and we will see the whole process. But let's focus on this specific project or this specific workflow that will become a project or will become a template. And that's when I jump into Excel and I say, okay, let's go like step by step. Let's imagine you are a car and you're going to this direction. What are the directions that you have to take to reach the success? But it's a good approach, like having this big picture, high level, and then maybe Miro makes extraordinary work when displaying visually this information.
I think what you're saying makes sense, but it's not always easy to pinpoint a specific workflow. Or with the experience you have, you already know that this very small workflow will just impact too many things, and you do have to consider what's around. An example I have is I'm working with a very big consulting firm right now, and the main process they want to migrate into Asana is marketing campaigns and managing briefs. It's very straightforward because currently they have a PowerPoint presentation you have to fill in with your brief details. But once you break things down, and we spent like 2 or 3 hours on this, going through the entire PowerPoint, you realize that the initial step of the PowerPoint should actually become a form that's submitted. The middle step, it will actually end up being a project for each campaign, but that project is based on a template, so you need to also create a template.
Yeah.
Because they have a list, they have a checklist for each campaign, but they also have information related to the campaign itself, which means you somehow end up placing the project in a portfolio to have an overview. And then they had a simple slide on KPIs and OKRs and goals, whatever. So you also end up realizing that each campaign has goals, but they do tie to goals that are above all the campaigns and decided by the whole company. So a single slide deck in our case ended up becoming a form, a portfolio, project goals, a list, and task templates as well, and rules and automation. So once you realize this, so yes, you can then focus on the project template. But I think it was an important step to realize how big this is going to end up being.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a quite complex workflow. Yeah. And how do you suggest when, like, we have identified, we know what what's the workflow. We can start with Miro or with Excel spreadsheet. When do you suggest to start like teaching Asana, like teaching the foundations? Like, okay, this piece of information on Miro will become a project, and in this project we have tasks, milestones, approvals, dependencies, custom fields, all the Asana jargon. When do you think it's the good moment to start introducing it into the conversation?
So the way we work is we identify champions. I think just like you do, we find out
Yeah.
people that want to help, and we talked about this in other episodes, like what's a good champion. And then we have a three-step process. We have the framing, the workshops, and the training. Framing and workshops are with the champions only. Trainings are with everybody. During the framing, we give the champions a quick 15-minute Asana demo. The goal is to have them hear me say the Asana jargon, show them a milestone, show them a custom field, show them a portfolio, and have them understand the global structure. And then we do the workshops right after the framing, because the framing allowed us to identify what we wanted to work on, and then we jump into the workshops. We don't train the champions. We usually anticipate that they're going to learn while doing. I don't think you
Okay.
need to be trained on how to create a template. I think, especially with this champion in front of you, you just go and you create a template. And as they share their screen, you guide them on where to click. And as they click, you tell them, okay, that's the template, that's the editor. You can start creating tasks. Let's put a few tasks. You can see that if you want to choose a date, it's actually not a date, it's a relative date, blah, blah, blah. You explain everything. So they learn by doing. And we feel like it's better because that allowed us to jump into the tool pretty quickly instead of having a very long ramp up time and have them be taught the basics before doing any work. Sometimes we decide to train them beforehand in some specific cases, but usually we train them on the spot while doing things.
Yeah, this is quite challenging, because sometimes you want to like speed up things, and it's easier like to do the things yourself and then show them like, this is what I did. But I'm sure that this is not the best way to teach them. So investing a bit more of time, like uh, mentoring instead of doing. So they, as you said, they learn by doing. It's the outcome is better at the end of the
We
process.
often have that discussion with clients because very often they come to us saying, this is our Excel file, come back to us when it's ready in Asana. And I push back and I say, no, I want to teach you how to do this because I want you to be autonomous. And usually they don't have time. So they push back to us saying, we don't have time, can you do this? And I push back again saying, if you don't learn, then the adoption is not going to work, because every time you have a problem, you're going to turn to us. We will charge you for the time spent, and it's going to be very frustrating for you. So you need to find the time to learn. Sometimes, for example, let's say they have 15 templates to create. We might have them create one or create two, and then my team might actually take over and create the 13 other templates, because they get it, they understand how it works now, the client gets it, and we can help them and do the heavy lifting. But it's important they do create the first ones themselves, I think.
This drives me to a question. I understand what you say, but this is if let's say that you are a business and you are taking like French lessons. You're learning French, and but you need like to issue a document in French, and you say, okay, I'm gonna send it to my agency so they can translate. And they send back, no, you're learning French, you have to do it yourself. No, but I want you to do it now. So I think that it's like two different topics. It's okay, it's important that the organization has some knowledge to do by themselves, and to create templates or create projects. But I think that it's also important that they can request for obviously if they have to pay for this, sometimes this money will be a good uh, measure to block this, but because I found myself in this situation, like yeah, we are our business is not creating Asana templates. Our business is to manage work, and they ask and they pay for a consultant to build the template. But it's quite a philosophical conversation. But
Yeah,
I
it also
understand.
it depends on many things. For example, we've had clients that did not have time, that paid for an engagement and did not have time to even take the first meeting. Like they were so overwhelmed they couldn't even meet us for the first time. Even if they did, they probably would have delegated things to us. But in a case like this, I know what's going to happen. They're going to delegate 10 templates to us. We're going to work on them. We're going to deliver the templates. They will not have time to review the templates. They will not have time to use and test them. And then 3 months will pass by and the adoption will be stuck and it's not going to move forward. It's not, you can't really give the key to the Asana account and say, okay, now we can use it. They have to still learn and announce to everyone that Asana has been chosen and train people. And it's not easy. They have to put in the work somehow.
Let me make an analogy. This is like driving a car. I mean, some businesses, they don't give a shit about how a car engine works. They just want to drive the car. Something you said is very important. They need to allocate the time to understand how Asana is driven. Maybe it's not super important that they know how the back office of Asana works or how templates are created. They just need to know the basics, like how can I complete tasks, how can I assign tasks, how can I read a dashboard. But I don't want to create projects. I don't want to create templates. I prefer to pay for someone editing or creating templates. I just want, but if they don't have even the time to take the basics training, then this is another, because they will not work and the adoption will fail for sure. But if they know how to use it, maybe not how to set it up, I'm not sure if that,
It's
well, from my
it's
experience, I have
debatable.
some clients that they don't know how to create a template, but they use Asana on a daily basis and they need it and they are happy to pay
Yeah, the thing is,
for.
yeah, but the thing is, the other problem is it might be okay on a day-to-day basis to reach out to you when there's a problem. The missing piece is you should be improving your Asana instance every day. Your template should evolve every day, every week, which they don't do because they don't really know how it works. And they will not pay you to improve something slightly. They will just wait. They will bulk the edits or potentially never pay you to improve anything. So over time, it's going to start being less efficient and things will not be up to date as they used to at the beginning. So just to go back on your analogy, I think it's not hard to learn how to change a tire, and it's very handy when you actually need to change your tire. If you don't want to learn, that's fine, but you're going to pay for someone to come in and help you, and you're going to
Yeah,
feel dumb because it's not that hard. It doesn't take long.
yeah,
So just take a few minutes, few hours to learn, and then you set for life.
yeah. I think we would agree that in a perfect world, organizations should know how to change a tire or set up an Asana template. But sometimes it's okay. Let's say it's good enough if you know how to work with Asana, even if you don't know how to set up
Yeah, and
a template.
what I'm yeah, and don't get me wrong, not everybody at the company needs to know Asana. Only the champions do, and we usually say that one champion is required for 10 to 15 people. So if you have a 50 people team, you just need like 3 champions, and they need to work a couple of hours per month after the initial training. So it's not that much, but it gives you flexibility to have your system be up to date and improve regularly.
Cool. Well, we reached the end of this episode. I think it has been quite nice. Many interesting topics. If you want to learn more, we recommend you to follow the other episodes of Deploy Asana Successfully. If you need additional advice, you can reach out to Bastien or myself. You have the URL ido-clarity.com, volcanic.agency. We recommend you also to check the Asana Ambassadors program, where you will find a lot of information about Asana, the product roadmap, at least the information that Asana can share, which is not very much, but it's well, a glimpse into the future. And see you next week with more information about how to deploy Asana successfully in your team. Thank you, Bastien.
Yeah.
See you next week.